السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, dear friends, today we are discussing about one of the disciplines of social science. So it is history. So we can roll into our discussion. First, the definition of history. It is a study of life of society of some particular society in past. That means that have happened in past, occurred in past, and to study all its aspects in relation to present development and future hopes. This is the definition of history. This means that in history means to study about our past, and it is related to our development and many plannings it will be occurred in future and our future hopes. The etymological definition of history. Herodotus is considered as the founder of history, and he was the first one who wrote a book in history. And history is derived from Greek word historia, which means inquiry. And here we discuss about functions of history. Here, history is considered under humanities, but sometimes history is considered as branch of social science. So we have to distinguish between history in humanity and also in social science. In social science, when history is introduced, it is mean by that in social science, if the history is studied in social science, we discuss about it scientifically, and we will compare it with other, and like that it will be a systematic and scientific study. But in humanity, if we study about history, we will narrate the happenings, we narrate the events samely as we telling a story. This is the difference between history in social science and history in humanities. And here in history is used to record events for future generation. We know that if we don't know about many of our histories and such events or that have done in our past, we could not never make such improvements and such developments in our manual life. But this is for the cause of such histories and past events we know, and we correct the mistakes from the past, and to reach at a most perfect one. And here in history, we study systematically a sequence of later events. It means that if an event is repeating and occurring repeatedly, then we study it and we systematically study it, and we conclude on a sequence related to these repeated events. And this is also a part of history. History vs prehistory. Now we have discussed about what is history and what is the topics described in each. Now we have to address prehistory. Prehistory means history of past when writing has not started. This is a simple definition of prehistory. It means that we know that sometimes we will get that mean archaeologists will get some writings of our past. This past, we not call it prehistory, but sometimes archaeologists does not get writings, but they get only some for some arts, some carvings, and such like things. So here this type of study is called prehistory. So they have to study then painting, drawing, carvings, and other artifacts. Sometimes these paintings and drawing may be carry many of information than the writings can carry. And so we study drawing and carving and other art crafts. And now we are addressing a new topic. This is historiography. This means to there are five and some more meanings of historiography. This means to the methods to this means methods to record history. How we can record history. This is the one of the meaning of historiography. And what there are three other ways of meaning in that mean to discuss about history of history. This is the first one. And the second, uh, to study about produced and produced concepts in history. It means when concepts and theories are produced in history, and if we study about it, then it is also included in historiography. And when why history is produced, this is a philosophical question. That means why if history is produced, is there an essentiality for history? This also the three concepts going under historiography. Then story of history. We are here telling a brief story about story of history. Herodotus is the first who wrote a book in history, and Greek historians viewed history as cyclical. That means history is what will be repeated uh, randomly, and it will be repeated continuously. And Simakian from Han Dynasty is considered as the father of Chinese historiography. And Ibn Khaldun, we know that Ibn Khaldun is introduced as has introduced a scientific method to study of history, and he is considered as father of history. We know that his uh, well-known contribution to history, his muqaddima, his well-known muqaddima. This is a major contribution of Ibn Khaldun to sociology in history. And in 17th and 18th century, new narrative of history was introduced. This means that in first history was introduced only if it is not against church and religions. But after 17th and 18th century, after Renaissance, almost as well as almost of sciences, history also began to introduce it in scientific method and to study it in scientifically, especially in Germany and France. But some claim that history is mere narration and imagination. This is very rare teams. Then, what is the scope of history? That means, what are the topics discussed in history? What we have to know about this, about after before we going to study history. The first is periods. Majorly, we consider about centuries and decades. But if it is a million years ago, then we call it prehistory. There are three parts of George prehistory: Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. And after discussing about major types of history, we can conclude this section. There are geographical locations, military and religious, cultural history, diplomatic history, economic history, intellectual history, public history. There are many major types of history we can see on screen. Geographical location means history about aspected, assumed, and related to geographical locations. And military, it will be related to war. And religious, it will be related to religion. And cultural, the more importance will be to the cultural transactions and imports and exports. And diplomatic and economic, as well as intellectual and public. Here what we have to discuss on history. So here I conclude my words. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.